Right. Well, hello, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for joining us today for Behaviorally Speaking Sustainability Livestream. My name is Brent Snider. I'm Managing Director of Global Business Development for Behaviorally. I've been here a few months now, which has been a very exciting time to see all the great client partnerships, the work that we're doing. If you're not familiar with Behaviorally, we have a ton of global experience in consumer insights, a lot of category experience. We apply a unique behavioral framework to everything that we do across the business. We utilize a lot of AI, cutting edge technology, and we're trying to impact the most important part of marketing, which is when the transaction occurs. Enough about me. I'm joined here by Lori Herman from Mondelez, who's the Director of Strategy and Commercial. Lori, welcome to the live stream.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you and I have worked together for quite a bit of time over the years, partnering on different initiatives, different companies, but love to hear a little bit more about you as well.
Sure. So I've been working with Mondelez now for the past 10 years. It's fun to work in the world of snacks. And currently I work with the portfolio companies that we've acquired over the past few years. We call them our North America Ventures brands and businesses. And it's a great experience for me. My passion and expertise is in consumer insights. So I get to be the voice of the consumer for these companies and brands that are a little bit more entrepreneurial than maybe some other, longstanding existing brands within our portfolio here. So I get to bring kind of the best of the big and the best of the small together to really help drive and accelerate these brands to grow. So
it's exciting. In 10 years, it's a lot of experience at one organization. So quite an exciting time, but at the same time, probably a great learning experience too. Awesome. Well, let's kick off. We've started this live stream. Really, you and I have sort of gone back and forth. We've discussed, three kind of topic areas I think would be most impactful for this series specifically. And I'd love to kick off and just say, or hear from you a little bit more about how Mondelez thinks about sustainability, right? So you mentioned a lot around big brands, small brands, different initiatives going on, and how you personally have been working within sustainability and bringing some of that to life. So the sort of juxtaposition between the company as a whole, how you personally think about it, I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think sustainability it's not just a buzzword. It's so critical right now. I think every company, every brand is thinking about how we can all do better, for the company, for the planet, for the people, not necessarily in that order. And so at Mondelez, it's actually one of our key pillars in our long-term business strategy. So, it's inherent now in what we do. All brands are thinking about how can we do better. So I think you probably heard the terms, having more of a positive impact. So we're trying to figure out how do we increase our positive impact, focusing on a few different areas, probably similar to many other, food manufacturers, but, let's use better ingredients that are sourced in more sustainable ways using, better farming practices, et cetera. Obviously packaging is always a big area for sustainability. There's a lot of plastic in a lot of the products that we purchase every day in our daily lives. So, Mondelez is striving to make sure that all of those are recyclable and that we're using, less virgin material. I think those are two really obvious areas. I think there's a lot of, or not, I think there are a lot of other considerations and practices that we have in place to really help figure out how we combat climate change. somewhat as it relates to better, farming practices with ingredients, but generally, I think for me personally, that's really super critical. And then also the social impact side of sustainability, I think is really important, promoting human rights and understanding how what happens where we may source our ingredients, how that impacts those communities and those environments. So anyway, so Mondelez is really, super focused. I mean, I didn't come here to, preach about how well I think we're doing in that area, but all of our ESG practices really are incredibly comprehensive. And I'm really happy to be a part of a company that has prioritized this as one of our key pillars, like I said, in our growth strategy. But for me personally, I thought, this morning when I was helping one of my boys get their breakfast going, like I like to think of myself as someone who really does care about sustainability and the environment. And, we have solar panels on our home, and, my husband drives a hybrid electric car, and we're trying to do our best. But as I'm taking out the frozen pancakes and opening the plastic bag, and then opening the secondary plastic bag to get out the actual, I'm realizing that I'm not doing all I could be doing, and that pancake manufacturer isn't doing all it could be doing to really help, kind of minimize the waste and I don't know, all of the less sustainable things that we encounter each day. So I don't know, just a big priority for me personally to think about how I can do better personally, and the brands that I work with, how they could do better. And I think you had asked too, how am I working with, what are some of my brands doing, or how am I helping them? And, we do a lot of consumer testing on, as we change the substrate for our packaging so that it's 100% recyclable. I sometimes debate, like, do we need to test that with consumers? Do we need to ensure that it's not going to negatively impact their experience or ultimately their consumption? But so we have a lot of those conversations, and I think it's determining when is it a change that we just must make, and it doesn't matter what the outcome is, or if we have some options, then kind of getting the consumer perspective along that way. So
No, I think that's fantastic to hear, and I think many brands sort of claim to put sustainability as a priority, right? And there's others that actually do it, and they're vocal about it, and it's ingrained within the business and the teams and everything else. And I heard that loud and clear from you, with Mondelez, and even, your morning routine with your boys. I have something similar. You start to become more aware of these certain things as people become more educated about the impact, but you're one person, you're one family. But collectively, if many people are doing this, it has a much greater impact,
exactly.
right? So that whole social element, to me, is huge. And I think that gets at how you connect with people emotionally. You started to rationalize the packaging as we were opening it, but did it elicit a behavior change? And I think that's what a lot of, companies are really trying to do is, not only create sustainable products and create a sustainable future, but at the same time, how can you use consumer research to really impact people, get people engaged, get them excited about the movement to helping the planet and everything else moving forward. So heroic, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. So the second area, you and I went back and forth a little bit over the last week or two around this. So you have lots of experience in Mondelez, but you also have lots of exposure across different brands, different categories. And what I got excited about to hear a little bit more from you is how you think about and what's being done within smaller brands, which may not have the same budgets as the larger brands. And I think in some cases, in some other organizations, the smaller brands follow the bigger brands. So whatever they're essentially doing, the smaller brands will do similar types of things. But it sounds like there could be slightly different things in learning that could happen between what's working for a smaller brand, which is growing and gaining market share and consumers, versus a larger brand, more established. They have a bigger voice in the marketplace. Love to hear about sort of how that two-way conversation is working within Mondelez, and if you're leveraging that, from an insight perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, my situation or my portfolio, it's unique. And because while the brands that I work with are technically smaller brands within the company that makes behemoth billion-dollar brands, the companies that I work with are sustainability, like as it relates to just sustainability. It's actually it's not something they do; it's something they are. So it's always been at the crux
Right.
of what the businesses are all about. And so I think to your point, like there's a lot of learning that can that can happen from these brands that are, our um venture brands, right?
Mhm.
They started out with sustainability practices at the core. So the ingredients they use are all, locally sourced or utilizing, it's best cocoa farming practices. It's never been
Mhm.
something that they had to shift and change
Right.
to follow, kind of like you were saying, like a big brand, and then the smaller brands may
Mhm.
follow. This is actually, they've already been, considering how to be a more sustainable brand from the start. So I think it's really more inherent in what they're all about. And so I think actually bigger brands can learn from these kind of
Sure.
smaller brands on what it takes to win with better sustainability practices. And I think one of the benefits is consumers see that authenticity in the brands I
Mhm.
work with, like Hue chocolate, like the consumers who know and love Hue because of the clean, natural ingredients and where they get them from and what the company stands for. And so this authenticity creates that loyalty and that, loyal following.
Yeah.
um, and I think also what bigger brands or bigger companies can learn from smaller brands are also willing to take more risks. I've worked on some of the biggest brands at Mondelez, but now obviously I'm with a different portfolio. And, I see that the willingness to just try something because we know it's the right thing to do, or we think that's what consumers, is going to meet their needs better.
Mhm.
So willing to take the risk and then, hope it's successful. But if not, you fail quickly and you move on and you figure it out another, path forward. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I think but of course the smaller brands learn from the bigger brands,
For sure.
especially like I think costs that you were suggesting, like that's one of the biggest challenges. And how do we, you know, learn from what others are doing to help figure out, a smaller brand,
Mhm.
you need to make sure you're managing costs and profitability. So what are bigger brands doing? Like, I think that's somewhat how I try to leverage the power of the big and the small, please.
It sounds like you've got it figured out.
Well, no doubt.
For the time being, right?
For
And
the time
I
being,
think
yeah.
that's where a lot of clients are also trying to tie different data sets together, right? And utilizing that in the most efficient but effective way. And when you can take that learning and apply it across the business and have that shareable to everyone to utilize, great things happen. Is the way I see it. So
Hmm.
no, that's fantastic.
Agreed.
So the next area, this is something that I've been thinking about. I don't think anybody really wants to talk about the pandemic anymore, but really in the post-pandemic world, we saw a huge shift in behavior, right? Buying behavior, engagement. We were almost forced, obviously, into buying from different channels, e-commerce versus physical location. A lot of that changed in a very short period of time. And as human beings, we adapt to that, right? And there's some things that stick around post-pandemic. There's some things that were created that fall away in terms of behavior. It's always been a passion of mine to really understand what is somebody
Yeah.
actually going to do, right?
Me too. Yeah.
And how can we predict that with market research using sort of behavioral frameworks or behavioral science. So I guess from my side, the question would be, did you guys see any new behaviors emerge, which clearly you probably did, but how did that impact things that you were thinking about or doing in sustainability? Did it speed things up, slow things down? Did the business rethink about it? Because I also feel like a lot of clients now these days are really talking about engagement with consumers. Like, how do you go above sort of the functional benefits and sort of some of the brand love that people feel towards brand? You talked about Hue. But I also feel like they're trying to drive even more engagement, and potentially sustainability is a topic that could help with that, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Gosh, so many thoughts on this question.
Yeah, no, pick your
I
top three, I guess, or your
I
favorites.
guess, right? So obviously the pandemic changed consumers' behaviors. I agree. I think some behaviors have, definitely have stuck,
Yeah.
or remained. Especially like as we work from different environments now, there's still a lot of snacking going on. And, in my world, that was something that we saw, a lot more, consumer snacking more often. But so it's definitely some behaviors that are sticking around, but I don't know as it relates to sustainability, and this is just my point of view. I don't know. I haven't studied it incredibly deeply, but I don't know sustainability like consumers' behaviors right now, post pandemic. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or if it's just because of other dynamics. And like, I mentioned earlier, I think climate change, we were just chatting before this, it's rained every single weekend here in the Northeast for the past 7 weeks. And yeah, I mean, rain happens and that's not climate change necessarily, but the wildfires that are happening all over North America and elsewhere, and the hurricanes that are causing devastation everywhere, like the things that are really so obviously impacting everyone. I think it's why people are starting to think more about sustainability. It's like, okay, wait a second. That wasn't happening a long time ago, and it's happening more now. And how bad can it be in the future for our children and our grandchildren? So I don't know. I think that's for many, I mean, certain there are many that aren't thinking about sustainability practices because of this climate change. But so I think for me, I think that's why some behaviors are changing.
Yeah, good one.
But and actually, ironically, just a couple of days ago, at Mondelez, we have a global strategic foresights team, which they're amazing, and they do a ton of kind of trends exploration and just consumer research to understand attitudes, behaviors. And they just published something on sustainability and whether consumers are willing to pay more for products that have sustainability claims or that truly are, more inherently sustainable. And yeah, the research was suggesting that, there are a large percentage of people who are saying they're willing to pay more. And when you look at repeat rates of products that actually have sustainability claims on them, repeat rates are higher, and a few other metrics I can't remember off the top of my head, all were higher, like kind of suggesting that there are people out there that, because of whatever the reasons,
Sure.
that are creating them to think about it a bit more. It is making an impact on their behaviors and their like willingness to choose one brand over another, and pay a little bit more for some. But there's still right now, I think, where we're at in 2023, there's this like, the way people think about things and what they feel about things, but the actions, we're starting to
Yeah.
see it, with these higher repeat rates, for example. But like, uh, I'm still buying these pancakes that are doubly wrapped in plastic. So
Right.
I need to figure out, how it becomes even more ingrained in all that we do. But yeah, so is it the pandemic? I'm not sure. Is it because there's so much more obvious impact of not recycling or doing things that the consumers could be doing, that's causing the behaviors? But um but I do think there's such a value to brands to start to evolve or continue to evolve, because it does drive that brand's affinity and connection. So it can only, I think, have a positive impact. I'm maybe a glass half full person, but I think
Yeah.
moving in that direction is only going to benefit the consumers themselves, the brands, and I don't know, ultimately make the planet better too. So
No, that's great. It's fantastic. And I think you're right. I think there's small things that we can do collectively that make a difference. And we're not asking people to completely throw away the, 2 layers of packaging and stuff like that. But at the same time, we're making kind of conscious decisions as well. And some of those small adjustments we're making in our daily lives have, a significant impact, I think, on the world as a whole, if we're all sort of collectively doing it together. And research can play a huge role in that, as you saw with the report that was recently launched by, that other team or that other colleague. So there are certain things that are being actioned on, and I think it's making a huge impact. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think as a lifetime researcher and consumer insights professional, I find the evolution of the way we do the consumer research too as critical. And you can ask people rational questions day in and day out, but really being able to observe their behaviors or kind of get to the underlying truth, I think is a critical way to make sure that people are actually going to do what they say they're going to do, or help figure out how to encourage that behavior. So
Wonderful. Well, any closing thoughts? This has been wonderful to reconnect. Obviously, pleasure to share the live stream with you today, and just a lot of good things that are happening in the industry. And I think, as I said, consumer insights still and will continue to play a huge role in the world of sustainability and what we're doing. So, any closing thoughts for the audience?
Yeah, no,
Words
well,
of
thank you.
wisdom
But yeah,
from
I don't know.
enjoy the sports with your sons. I'll
Yeah.
do the same.
Well, I do have to go and do some research on other alternative breakfast options, I think. But other than that, no, I just think it's well, I will say I'd say probably 5 years ago, I don't know, like I probably wasn't really. Yes, was I recycling my cardboard? Of course,
Mhm.
but I
Right.
didn't know that I was super passionate. I wasn't one that was, um, the first to talk about sustainability, but I don't know whether it's being in the industry and working with all these great brands, or if it's like I said, I heard that the wildfires that were happening in Canada were going to impact the fall foliage in the
Right.
Northeast here. It's just like starting to connect the dots that, wow, actually this is pretty important. So I don't know. So for those people, I'd say, like, yeah, it's important, but I don't know, what can I do about it? There is a lot to I don't know, start to dive into, maybe, and from you yourself personally as a consumer, but also for your brands that you work with. There's even one little step is going to be, when you accumulate it with everything, I think will be important to do. So I don't know. I don't know if that's words of wisdom or just
It
me
is. It
rambling a
is.
little bit, but
No,
but
no,
I
no.
wasn't I wasn't this person, like
I would have to agree with
always.
you. I wasn't either. And I think it's great because you can experience the things that the brands are doing, but also have influence on also what they're doing, from a business perspective, which gets me
Exactly.
super excited and understanding and closing that gap with people, what they say and what they do, is hugely impactful and rewarding. So,
Yeah.
well,
Awesome.
great. Well, we've come to the end of the series or the live stream. So thank you again, Lori, for everything. Always great to see you continue your continued success. And good luck with the brands. And if anyone is more interested in more things with Behaviorally, info@behaviorally.com, let us know. But Lori, pleasure as always. Look forward to meeting up in person again, maybe at a new event coming up or maybe in the office.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lori. Have a good afternoon. Take care.
Bye.